Let me start with Mark and David and Ron, and if you can talk about what appealed to you guys what appealed to you about the idea of a prequel from a storytelling perspective, and how did the interaction with Sci-Fi go when you talked to them about it?
Oh, please don't make us do that. No, it was actually kind of fortuitous timing. We had been talking for about a year off and on about the fact that Ron had been involved in a number of Star Trek spin-offs, and Hercules had had a couple of spin-offs, and we were sort of puzzled over whether or not it made sense to explore the possibility of the Battlestar universe having a spin-off. And we'd had a brief discussion with Mark and his group about some of the ideas we were thinking about, that it would be a prequel, that it would be a soap opera, that it would involve sort of this idea of using artificial intelligence as the oil MacGuffin to a Dallas-like world. And then we sort of continued making our show, and we got a phone call from someone at the studio who said that Rami Abishan, a very accomplished and successful writer, had come in to discuss an idea that was very similar in its sort of parameters with what we had discussed, and they put us together with Rami, and it was really kind of perfect because we were so busy with Battlestar. We needed someone to kind of run point, at least initially, and it just worked out really well.
Ron, what sort of did you find so compelling about this idea of the Dallas, using the science fiction genre to sort of approach a drama show from the family? I think it's been called, Sci-Fi's calling it family saga perspective. What was it about that was so compelling to you from a storytelling perspective?
It was mostly that it just hadn't been done in this genre. I mean, I was intrigued by just trying to take a lot of things that we had done in Battlestar, which was to approach it as a drama that was set against this science fiction kind of action-adventure backdrop and really sort of make it a character piece. And I thought, well, let's lose the action-adventure component too and take it out of space. And can you sustain, a science fiction show that's really just about characters and really just is a drama first and foremost, and put it on a planet and make it, very contemporary in its look and feel, but sort of explore a lot of moral and ethical issues that the advance of technology would bring up. And I thought, let's really try to do that. Let's make the first science fiction sort of primetime soap. I just liked the concept of trying to do that because it was a challenge and because it was very different than what we had done at Galactica, and it was important to me that if we did a spin-off series of the show, that we didn't just do it again, that we do something that was different and that was a challenge to ourselves and a challenge to the audience.
Okay. And Mark, what was Sci-Fi's reaction to this coming from this different place?
Well, we asked did Ron and David have to be involved?
As we should have.
No, actually, you know what? I think, and Ron kind of mentioned it, I think our biggest concern was to not be derivative of Battlestar. I think Battlestar was such a singular thing. It was so successful for what it was, and I think the biggest crime would have been to look like you're just ripping yourself off. And I think the minute we heard their idea, and I think Remy obviously was a big part of that, it was clear that this was going to be its own animal. It was going to attack a whole different set of issues. And I think that we were coming out of this kind of Bush-Iraq war dynamic and into a whole different place as a country. And I think that this felt like it addressed a whole new set of socio-economic issues in a whole different way. So we were very excited about that too.
I just want to ask you, because Battlestar Galactica got so much attention when it came to the final episode. Do you guys how far ahead do you guys have this story mapped out, and how far ahead do you know where it's going and where it's going to lead to?
Well,
4 years.
4 years. I mean, with this one, ultimately, you know where it's going because Galactica has sort of laid out a general sense of what the future holds. Eventually, the Cylons will rebel. There will be a Cylon war, and then there will be an armistice, and 40 years will go by before the Battlestar miniseries. So we know that, and I think that's okay. We are doing a period piece. You can still do period pieces about World War II, and the Nazis are going to lose, unless it's Trenton Tarantino is doing it. you can still tell interesting tales in that sense.
Right.
We don't know right now exactly where the end point of Caprica is going to be. You could pick out about a half dozen pretty significant landmarks between where we are now and the beginning of the Battlestar miniseries that are potential ends to the show. But I think what we'll probably decide somewhere along the line is what is the organic place for this part of the story to end, rather than trying to get it to some historical sort of marker up ahead. We'll just, you know, in the first season of Battlestar, I couldn't have told you how many episodes were ahead of us or how many seasons. And we're sort of being free with that at the moment, too. We tend to think about a season ahead and about, you know, 10 or 12 episodes ahead, and let's get to that point. And once we get to that point, then we'll figure out where the next 10 or 12 episodes take us.
Hi. I don't know that I've ever really seen a TV show take on, or not take on, but explore religion in such a sense as Caprica is. And I think you guys have managed to skew it enough so that it's not obviously, like the STO is not obviously one particular religion. But I just wondered if the network, if you guys have gotten any flack for your portrayal of religion.
No, it was the opposite.
It was the opposite, which was one of the amazing things. I mean, very early on in the process, when we did Galactica, I've told this story many times, wrote the first draft of the Galactica miniseries, and when I was writing it, there was a scene between Baltar and number 6, and just something I found on the page, I just had number 6 say, "God is love" to Baltar, and I really didn't know what that meant or why she would say it, and I just thought, well, that's an interesting, odd thing for a robot to say, let's go with that. And when the draft went into the network, there was an executive at the time named Michael Jackson, no relation, who gave this note that said, that's a fascinating idea, and you've already got these sort of metaphors and allegories to Al-Qaeda and religious fanaticism with the Cylons. Go more in that direction. And I thought, I will never get this note again from a network to put more religion into a show, so I'm going for it. And it just became part of what Galactica was. And in all the years that I've been working on this series, on both these series, I've never had a note from the network that really challenged this as a fundamental part of the show, or the political commentary on the show. You know, we have our battles, but our battles tend to be things about ADR, graphic content, you know, how much blood you're going to show, how nude are they really going to be, you know, what a particular scene is about, how complicated the show is. But
not about the important stuff.
They've never really gone at us for the important stuff, and that's a tribute to sci-fi. I mean, it's really an amazing place to do this kind of work.
The great subplot, by the way, to the Michael Jackson story is he had already either been fired or resigned and was on his way back to London. So it was one of those things where it was like,
here's how to sync them.
whatever you guys want to do. Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Mark, are there any internal discussions about this stuff that David and Ron never hear about because it doesn't get?
They're really, you know what? They're privy to a lot of those discussions. I think that we're very, look, I think early on we knew that we wanted to really go for it with this show. There have definitely been times when we're on the phone with them and I'm like, okay, we're just gonna go. Mostly around the season breaks, where it's like, okay, we're gonna, and this is a spoiler alert for Battlestar, but it's like, we're going to jump to a year later, and you're like, sounds like a good idea. But honestly, I would say that not about the politics, and not, I mean, the sex stuff actually surprised me too. It's like, okay, we're going to let the spines glow, and okay, if no one in New York is okay with it, I'm okay with it. It's really mostly been about drug use and things of that nature, more than anything.
Yeah, not to make this, you know, a mutual admiration society, because it is true, we fight like cats and dogs, but I would say one of the advantages, and I wish more networks and producer relationships kind of understood this intuitively, the advantages to being on the same page about what the vision of the show is. Going all the way back to the earliest conversations, which began with, both on the network side and on our side, why does the world need another space opera, to go back to Battlestar? Why is it necessary? There's Star Trek, there are 18 Star Treks, there are 50, you know, rip-offs of Star Treks. Why does, and the fact that the network had an agenda to have that question answered before we were going to move forward. And we had the agenda ourselves, like we didn't want to work on another Star Trek. That wasn't what we wanted either. I would say that informed everything that happened for the next 5 years. And there's a level of trust that takes place. I've given Mark credit for this in the past. Situations like Ron and I are pitching the season 3 finale, and we're all excited because we've come up with what it is. It's not going to be they shoot at Dama. It's not going to be 1 year later. It's whether Baltar's guilty or innocent. It's going to be a courtroom drama like you've never seen before on Battlestar Galactica. And there was sort of this like silence on the other end of the phone, and Mark was like, "Really? That's it?" And I was actually doing a little Caprica homework recently. I was going back and looking at some of the old episodes, and I was watching that season 3 finale. And now when you look at it, it's like, is Baltar guilty or innocent? It's like, who gives a shit? That's like a half hour before the thing's over, you know? And so, but I don't think that sort of give and take would exist if there hadn't been in the very earliest DNA stages this sense of, we're making the same show. We'll disagree about 500 things in the details, but we're making the same show. And that's where I think you avoid the big problems.
That's true, actually. The 1 year later was my idea.
I just want to say one quick thing about it. I got flack, actually, from 2 areas. I have fundamentalists in my family. And I got some flack from somebody saying, oh, no, you know, because they think that being a terrorist and being into one God is somehow painting them in a bad light. And I try to say, no, it's not about one or the other. It's, you know, one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter. I hate to say that, but it's the truth. And, you know, she slows down, but they get confused. They're not sure if this is insulting to them or not.
That's, by the way, that's the beauty of sci-fi, right? Is that you're just far enough to the left so that you can't really pin it on one particular thing. Yeah. You can't just say, well, this is clearly they're doing this or that. And I think the brilliant thing that these guys have done, starting with Battlestar, was making the polytheists the good guys, and the bad guys were the ones who believed in the one true God. And so then that spins you automatically, because it's like, wait, I'm on the bad guy's side. That can't be right. And so I think automatically it puts you off kilter, and I think then once you're off kilter, you can get in there with a whole bunch of other things to talk about.
Let me move on to the casting of this show and talk a little bit about how maybe you guys can start. I mean, were there any performers who roles were created with certain performers in mind, or was it every character open? Were there auditions held for all of the characters?
They paid us, basically. These are the winners of the lottery.
Well, you know, it was sort of it was similar to Battlestar in one way, in that this is, as you see, a mix of familiar faces and people you've seen and over the years are well-established actors, and then new faces and people that are going, you know, just by virtue of their age, are going to strike the audience as, you know, a discovery. And I think one of the things that I've said now for a while, the one thing we needed to get just dumb lucky with on Caprica was the casting, because we were so fortunate on Battlestar. We had Oscar nominees and Vancouver dinner theater actors alike, and by the middle of the first season, but before that, I remember Bonnie Hammer saying as a condition of the series pickup, you've got to get me off the damn ship. I can't be on this ship, you know, every single episode. And as it happened, we had this actor, Tom Pennicott, who was a day player who played the character Hilo in the miniseries, who we sort of left down on Caprica. Bye. And that was the end of his story. And we went, wait a minute, we've got the answer. We can go back to him. Right. And these are not just opportunities that satisfy a given episode or a given storyline, that can actually make the difference on whether you get your series ordered or not sometimes if you do it right. And so by the end of Battlestar, we're writing to, I mean, AJ, and we're writing to Tomo, we're writing to guys who were, you know, had 3 lines in the miniseries, now they're carrying episodes, and that's just the kind of, you can't plan for that. You have to just hope you get. So our hope was, can we please just get as lucky or near as lucky with Caprica, and now as we've completed the first season, and as we've looked, I mean, I've called Sasha in a way that's damning him with faint praise, the Tomo of Caprica, because like in Battlestar, you know, he started in Caprica as a guy who was, you know, we didn't necessarily have large plans for, and he was such an overwhelming presence in the pilot. We found ourselves really compelled to write for him, and that's what you want. That's really what you need. Is you need to have your staples, your mainstays, like Isai and Eric, who are your foundations, and then you need to be able to really get lucky with people you surround them with your discoveries. Magda and Alessandra are, I mean, two of the most exciting actresses I've ever seen, and we have them both in the same show. You know, so I mean that's the sort of thing you just can't, as I say, you can't plan for. You just have to hope.
So was Eric somebody who you had in mind for the role of?
He was on a short list, but I remember Jeff was a big proponent. Jeff Reiner, the director.
Jeff pushed. It was a slightly different process than Battlestar. In Battlestar, we kind of, early on in the process, we sort of said, well, it would be great if we got Edward James Olmos and Mary McDonnell for these two roles. That would be great. Wouldn't that be great? We kept saying to each other, that will never get that. And when we were developing Caprica, I don't think we literally had such a definitive sort of A and B of who we wanted, but there were short lists and there were people that were, oh, wouldn't it be great if? And then I think we also had sort of the advantage of having the Battlestar's prestige to carry us forward, and we felt like, you know,
yeah, people actually read the pilot script.
Yeah, we're going to actually, people actually read the script, and we might get some really good actors.
Right, right. Well, I remember we did an event in LA where Edward James almost said when he saw the Battlestar Galactica script, he like just threw it aside, and then he was talked into reading it, and he had to have the part. Mark, what about the channel from the casting perspective? What role did you guys play?
Whatever they said they liked, we agreed with.
They're laughing.
In our contract.
Yeah, I think there's some boilerplate in there. No, you know what? It's very much, I think, I don't think it's a luck, though, that they got the cast they've got on both shows. And I think that it was really because of great material. And I think the best surprises have been not just, I think, what was really interesting, I have to say this about Magda, what was really interesting about Magda was there was not a lot of attention paid to that role because she was just the best friend, right? She was just Lacey, the best friend. And I think that it really is a testament, I think, to really how good these guys are, and obviously how amazing Magda is, that she blew up. I mean, much like Sasha, like I think that they were the ones that you didn't really necessarily pay a ton of attention to in casting, who really took on those roles, and not that you were just like, whatever, hire whoever, we don't care. I mean, there was discussion around it, but you know, when you're casting your leads, there's all of this back and forth, and you send the tapes to New York, and then there's discussion back with that. And these were roles that were basically like, okay, we think they're great, go with it. And I mean, it is, just as David said, it is like the blessing when you have that kind of depth in cast, that you know you're going to watch a full hour of a character like that, and that actor is going to be able to carry it and bring something brand new to it. And I think that's really true of both shows, and I don't think it's a mistake. I think it is because of some really skillful casting and some great material.
Yeah.
And it really is an organic process, because what happens in the writer's room when you actually are in production and you're doing the show and your dailies are coming in and you're creating stories simultaneously, you start watching dailies and you start noticing things and you start saying, oh, well, he did well with that. Oh, he could do that again. Or did she just do that? Run that back. And look at that look on her face. And you start picking up these little clues, because when you're watching the show with the writers or by yourself and you're a writer, you're trying to hear their voices. You're trying to understand, you know, how does Alessandra play Zoe as opposed to what I thought Zoe would be on the blank page. Okay, now it's Alessandra. Now I'm trying to pick up her voice, and she's trying to, and there's this sort of, you're trying to come together and create this character. And you start noticing what they can do, and the greatest thing of all is when you realize that the cast is lifting the material. When the cast is taking a line that's just a simple line of walking in and saying hello, or just doing some bit of business, and they're creating something else with it, and you kind of sit forward and you go, oh, well, I'm going to give them something else. Right. And with this cast, in a very similar way to the Battlestar cast, is that you were constantly going, wow, throw them this, do that. Hey, they can do this. He's really good at that, and she's, oh, and you just kept
Or in the case of
finding this.
Alessandra, we can't just have a robot on screen. We need that actress now, so let's come up with a device. And that was the engine for that, because in the initial planning, well, I remember us talking with Remy going, you know, the actress we hired to play Zoe isn't really in the series. And it's kind of a problem. And it was...
That's okay, because we won't pay her much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so it was her performance more than anything else that drove us to this conceit of, okay, we're going to show the audience the girl inside the robot.
Well, wait, that's an interesting point, because I mean, I don't want, again, to ask you guys to give too much away, but I watched this and I think that, I could be wrong again, Mark, but I think that Zoe is somehow an early incarnation of humanoid Cylon. That somewhere that's where that's going, and that I would think that that's surprising for me to hear you say that wasn't always part of the plan, to show this human inside.
Well, it's not that she wouldn't have been in the show. She just wouldn't have been in the show nearly as much. Okay. We would have seen her in virtual world. Yeah. Whatever the plans may or may not have been along the lines you're talking about would have probably remained the same. It was really this impulse that said that actress needs to be on screen.
Okay.
And, in that dress.
And part of it, part of it was a production thing, you know, in all honesty. Part of it was, oh, well, we can't afford to do the CGI character, you know, robot in every single shot. But then what actually turned out is this became a more expensive option because it takes longer to shoot these things, because we now have to shoot the scenes 2 ways. Right. And you stand there and the crew groans because you'll do the whole show, the whole scene with Alessandra, and then, okay, time for the robot pass, and it's like, everybody goes, oh my God. Now we're going to go back to the beginning and do everything
and it's just a stick.
with just the stick. And the actors all have to do it. And, it's a huge
like a great story. She had to hug the stick, and like it was a very emotional scene, and we are looking at her like, oh my gosh, what is going on?
And she's like talking way over there. Oh, I love you, Alessandra.
Can you guys talk about the what your audition? You all 4 of you auditioned for the part. Can you talk about what scene you did, what that process was like?
Yeah, I initially auditioned for Lacey, the best friend. Not so hot, and then
you were about to wear that dress tonight.
Yeah, no, I know. Very similar.
So, yeah.
I auditioned for Verges initially, which was I think a very different storyline that they did away with and replaced with another one. And then I had the offer to do Sam. And when I read it, and I was like, blades, tattoos? Easy choice. So, so I said, yeah, I'll do Sam. And the next day I was in Vancouver.
Did you know that you nailed it?
When the offer came in, yeah, I figured that.
When you did it, did you feel good about
the Verges audition? Well, I mean, I auditioned, like I said.
Yeah.
I don't know. They weren't there. I think we sent the tape from LA to Vancouver, so I had no idea. The only thing I remember is when I was cast and I finally got up for the read-through, Jeff Reiner was there, the director of the pilot, and Ron was there, and David was there. But after the read-through, I went over to Jeff to introduce myself, and he goes, I didn't think you were that tall. And that's it, and that was the story.
That's very high praise from Jeff Reiner, by the way.
He had it at that point.
Yeah. I auditioned, and the funny thing is that there was another actor that came in at the audition, and like, weird, because I went with a friend of mine, we were working on music, and I was like, oh my God, I've got, we got to focus. I'll help you with your lines. I mean, it was like, it's like, comes in, there's like, I could say, I don't know if I could say names like Rumor Willis, like names showing up, and like for the Zoe role.
Like for you.
You got lucky. Nepotism is not that strong. Anyway, and then I saw this actor who was a fine actor, but I thought he looked much more like Edward James Olmos, and I'm like, let's go back to the studio. It's like, oh, and I thought, well, no, I've done that before in a movie called Bad Boys. It was my first audition, like, of a big major film. Just to digress, I thought I wasn't strong enough because I saw all these big, badass guys, and I'm like, well. And then you get angry at yourself for even doubting yourself, and you go back in, you know what? I focused on it, and and I forgot everything else. And the writing, when the writing is good, it just flows. And it was the scene, the biggest scene where he asks me about my daughter. What would you tell my daughter, you know? And to be honest with you, I liked my audition better than the final product because, you know, in your head, it's one way, but when you see it, you go, okay, oh, can I do it again? You're always trying to improve your work, but I felt good. I felt like I was in a real place, and they asked me questions about myself as a person. I just felt they were engaged. I remember you two guys being there, right? Yeah, you were you there? And I just felt a connection, and I felt intelligence behind the eyes. And that's really important for me, because if we're going to be doing this and married for a few years, which is what a show is, you don't want to be doing things that you might find silly later. So my hat's off, and I'm very, very grateful.
Great. Magda, what scene did you do?
I think I did 2 scenes, but the one that I remember was the one where I find Zoe covered in blood on half her body, and I react to that, and I see that my best friend is still alive. I get really, really, really nervous in auditions. Like, I don't think I'm gonna get anything, and I like shake and I can't breathe, and it's like a big deal for me. And so for me, the less I audition, the better. And I had to go, get my wisdom teeth done on the weekend. It was like a couple days away, and I just didn't want the stress of auditioning. I'm sorry. And I was just like, I needed to get it done, and I just wanted to focus on the pain that I was going to go through with my teeth. And but then I was like, I really, really like the script, and I want to audition. And so I went in, and then they wanted to have me as a callback, and I couldn't because my face got infected. My teeth got swollen, and I got dry socket, and so like this whole face got numb, and I couldn't talk, and then this side got infected, and so I couldn't. There's
a reality show here.
I couldn't talk for about a month, so I guess they had to make the decision either way off of the tape because I couldn't come in. I couldn't talk until basically like a couple days.
I kind of remember. I don't remember. I remember something about she couldn't come back.
I couldn't talk until basically a couple days before we actually started shooting the pilot.
So
I was like,
you must have had a very compelling tape, I guess, then. Alessandra.
I'll tell you something funny. The best was when I did the network test. They don't even know this. The girl that I was testing against was one of my oldest friends from growing up in the business. And we had actually tested against each other 6 different times throughout our life. And so we had this whole thing that, you know what, at this point in our life and this point in our career, whichever one of us gets it, we'll be so happy. But then I felt bad because she was the biggest Battlestar fan, and she was telling me all this information. I go, what's a Cylon? Like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be playing right now. So when I went in there, I thought, okay, you know what? I'm just going to do it how I am, and I'm just going to be really rough and tough and do it because I have no idea what I'm even going in for. And that's what happened. Plus, I bonded with the director because he and I are both Los Angeles Laker fans. So I think that's kind of how my in got in with them.
So how did your rival or friend take
Not rival by any means.
Friend.
Friend.
How'd she take it?
She's great.
Okay,
you know?
good.
One of my biggest supporters.